right, I am making sourdough starter. You guys don't know how easy this is. I have 2 cups of warm water with a tablespoon of sugar and a tablespoon of yeast. Now, before I put my flour in, I'm gonna see if my yeast is activated because I don't know if this one has expired or not. So we're gonna put it in here, get it all mixed up, and see if it gets all foamy. Just give it about 5 minutes. All right, so now I am going to add my 2 cups of flour. And I'm just gonna mix this really well. All right, this is how it looks. I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap and let it sit for 2 days out on the counter. You wanna make sure you have a bowl that's big enough because it is gonna expand. And just leave your plastic wrap cut up loose so that the extra gases can come out. Before I get to the next part of the recipe, this recipe is in our Dining on a Dime cookbook, volume 2 on page 98 and 99. The link is in the description below. Okay, you can see how it's getting all bubbly and big. That's how you know your yeast is working and your sourdough is starting. I'm making sourdough bread. Here is my starter out of the fridge. Now, I know true sourdough people are going to be yelling at me. You don't use yeast in sourdough bread. Okay, I don't feel like waiting all day long for my sourdough to rise. So if you don't want to use yeast, so I have my hot water and my yeast in here because I'm going to use dry milk just because I'm trying to use up my stockpile, but I am proofing my yeast and I am using yeast just so that it will rise quicker. So I'm not making this according to the directions. You can make it according to the directions. Now, if you want traditional sourdough bread, all you have to do is just let it rise. It'll take like 8 hours to rise, but I don't want it to take that long. So I am going to just use some yeast to get it going. All right, and then I have 1.5 cups of sourdough starter. There we go. Now, to feed my starter, I'm going to add 1.5 cups of flour into my starter with some warm water. So 1.5 cups of flour, 1.5. Then I'll get my water in just a minute, and then I'm going to leave it on the counter again for 2 days to let it get going again, and then put it back in the fridge. So I have my starter in here, and I'm going to add my salt. Michael's making googly faces at me back here. And a little bit more sugar. Okay. Oops, I let my oven go too long. Okay, so we're gonna stir that all in. And my milk that I need to use up. Okay, you can see my yeast is poofing there. See how it's poofed up? Okay. Get my dry milk in here. Get that all stirred up. Oh man, it smells so good. Okay, there we go. And some flour. Now you can use the mixer if you want. I'm just going to stir it by hand the old-fashioned way. Looks great. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm mixing in the flour, but I'm leaving this extra flour on the sides so that I don't get too much flour in there. So I'll just pull a little bit in as I'm kneading it, push down and turn, push down and turn, bring in the little bits, push down and turn. And you want to just do this until it gets smooth. All right, you can see how nice and smooth that is. So I don't clean out my bowl. I just plop it in there. Grease the bowl, grease the top so it doesn't dry out, and I'm gonna stick it in my very warm, or very low warm, so like 120-degree oven. And that is how I'm going to let it rise. Okay, now for my starter, I've got my 1.5 cups of water to replenish it. And I am going to get it all stirred up, let it sit for 2 days, and then we will have sourdough starter again. All right, it has been about an hour and it has risen. Now, these are my stone bread pans that I got from my aunt that I just like using every now and then. I don't know if they actually do anything different for the bread, but it's just kind of fun to use them. All right, so since these are slightly bigger, instead of 3 loaves, I'm gonna do 2. Know that bacon grease adds a really good flavor to your bread. So this is Mom's tip that she's always used. So I am going to put a little bit of bacon grease on both of these. Actually, a little bit more. So I'm going to do this the proper way, flatten it out. And yep. Okay, and then roll it up so that it's all nice and even in our pan, just like so. Then I'm going to let this rise. Now, if you want to do it the Tara easy way, I don't roll it out, I just form it into a nice okay. Now we're gonna let this rise for about another hour and then we'll bake it. Okay, my bread is almost risen. I'm taking a video right now because I'm gonna have company showing up in about 3 minutes. And it's gonna be lots of noise. So I'm gonna let it rise just a bit more and then I will bake it. Okay, here's a little trick. I put my meat thermometer in my bread, and when it reaches 200, you know your bread is totally done on the inside. I love these thermometers. They make baking so easy. All right, my bread is done. Okay, should have let it rise just a little bit longer, but that is okay. Oh yeah, we're gonna let that cool, and then we're gonna taste test.